BASA said it could take the economy more than 3 years to recover if the right strategy is not followed. Let's talk about this blueprint. Mark Kingston from Business for South Africa joins us on the programme. Martin, thank you. Thanks very much for being with us here on the programme.
Morning, Leanne, and morning to your viewers.
So let's get into it. I mean, what are those points that you feel can save the South African economy?
Well, we have to instill confidence, both consumer and investor confidence, as a matter of urgency. Obviously, we're now facing the biggest contraction in our economy that we've experienced since 1994, and indeed before that, several million jobs already being lost and potentially to be lost. And our debt levels are soaring as a country, and happening at the same time, of course, that the storm is upon us. We're seeing a very significant increase both in infections and in mortalities, and that's expected to go on for the next 2 or 3 months at least. And the pandemic will be with us probably for the next 2 years. And we're saying we have to take very significant decisions and implement them now, courageous decisions about matters that we knew were confronting us as a country for several years. And if we take those decisions, then we can turn around the economy and we can embark on a much more aggressive, inclusive growth strategy. But to do that, I think that we do need to work together as social partners. That's what Business for South Africa has identified. And we need to build on the momentum that we've achieved in terms of cooperation over the past 3 months. The sort of issues that we've identified, for example, are infrastructure, a sustainable, viable infrastructure, shovel-ready projects that are already in the pipeline. We need to get them moving to send a signal. We need to deal with those issues such as renewables, bring them on stream as quickly as possible. Again, an easy win. We need to rebase our budget before the medium-term budget policy statement, as indeed the Minister of Finance said in his supplementary budget some 2 weeks ago. These are actually easy wins if we're able to work together, as I say, make the choices we've avoided over the past several years and work together collaboratively as a society.
And this is something that I think is of vital importance, because if we don't, and if we don't do something and very, very fast, where will this leave South Africa?
And we have said that we're at a fork in the road now. We can either carry on along the decline that we've already seen, an accelerating decline that's going to result in increased inequality, poverty, levels of unemployment. I mean, we've already seen narrow unemployment increase to 35%, broad unemployment to 45%, youth unemployment to well over 50%. That's an unsustainable set of affairs, where the demands on the fiscus, a shrinking fiscus, we know that tax revenues are going to be some 300 billion rand less for this year than was anticipated, are not going to be able to provide the social support that's required for the most vulnerable in society. And that pool of vulnerable people is growing every single day. I think that that's going to put enormous pressure on society, which we can ill afford. And therefore, we really have no choice but to take these decisions, as I said, which have eluded us for several years, despite the fact that in reality, they've been staring us in the face. They've been within our grasp.
So, Martin, you emphasize infrastructure, and that is one thing that government has also said that we need to invest more in. And so I think between business and government, you're on the same page when it comes to that. However, it's a matter of where do you get the money from, because, all of this takes money. So where do you suggest that South Africa start fundraising or start paying for these new investments and infrastructure in particular?
Well, that's exactly correct, Leanne. We estimate that over the next 3 years, the deficit will be 4 trillion rand, 2.4 trillion in the public sector, including state-owned enterprises, 1 trillion in the private sector, obviously buffeted by the storms of COVID-19. And we're not going to be able to rely upon simply conventional sources of funding, including domestic funding. We're going to have to go offshore. We've already discussed the fact that we're going to be approaching the IMF for the COVID facility, but we'll have to tap all potential sources of funding at a time when other emerging markets are in the same situation as ourselves. So we're in a competition, and we're going to have to dress ourselves up and ensure that the ease of doing business and our competitiveness improves radically in the short term. And if we do that, and we have collaboration between the public and the private sector, we have absolutely no doubt that the business community, large and small, can play a very significant role in the design, development, implementation, and indeed operation of infrastructure across all of the network industries, from energy through to road, rail, ports, and of course telecommunications and water. So there's a vast demand. We've been aware of them for many years. There's an acknowledged role for the private sector. I'm pleased to see that the ANC itself, in its own document released last Friday, recognized that private-public partnerships is, in fact, the way to go forward, particularly with respect to infrastructure projects. And if we do those projects in a responsible, no doubt that we can access funding that would otherwise not be available to the sovereign.
Yeah. You know, Martin, what worries me is obviously the issue where government comes into play. And I mean, we've looked and spoken quite a lot about their plans as to where they think South Africa should be going and how we should be funding it. Now, the whole issue of pension funds has come up in terms of something and a way of funding some of these things that have been mentioned by government. And this, of course, is a great worry. I mean, we just have to take one state entity like Eskom, where we are now living through load shedding again. You're looking at something like SAA, which, you know, the refinancing and the package has been approved. And it feels like you're throwing money away, good money after bad money, which of course becomes bad money. Now, these decisions once again are going to have serious repercussions for the future of every single South African. Where do you stand on this?
Well, we have said that we do not believe that SOEs that are not either systemically important and or should be retained on the state's balance sheet. They should be migrated off the state's balance sheet. As you say, we cannot afford to throw good money. As pension fund money is concerned, we are not supportive of any approach which would undermine either the stability and integrity of the financial services sector in South Africa, or compromise, indeed, the responsibilities of trustees who are fiduciaries for the beneficiaries of those pension funds, and whose savings cannot be eroded by being exposed either in terms of concentration or in terms of returns to inferior assets to those that they signed up for initially. Now, having said that, if we are able to mobilize capital from all sources on a responsible basis without compromising those criteria that I mentioned, we're in support of that, but not at any price. As far as Eskom and SAA are concerned, clearly we need to restructure Eskom post-haste. It is most unfortunate that at this moment in time, when the surge is upon us, when we're entering winter, we should be experiencing load shedding. It's the last thing that we would want, given the very low levels both of confidence, consumer and investor confidence, and the heightened health risk. We hope that Eskom will get through it as quickly as possible. Yeah. But I have to re-emphasize that none of us can do this on our own. Not Eskom, not the government, not business. We need to work together collaboratively and smartly, building, as I said, on the collaboration and cooperation we've established over the past 4 months.
Yeah. Martin, I believe that you've handed this over to government, and I don't imagine you've received a response as yet. That's something I'd like you to answer. And secondly, skills. This is a big problem. What you're talking about requires skills that at this point in time, it looks like South Africa is severely missing.
Yeah, Leanne, we have engaged with government at the level of the president, many of the ministers in the economic cluster, equally with organised labour in the context of the Millennium Labour Council. Last week, we tabled our documentation to NEDLAC, to the social partners there. I believe that there's common ground across a whole host of areas, including the one that you just cited, which is the need to reinforce a state which is lacking in both competence and capability. I think that's been acknowledged by the president and many of his ministers. And we've said that the private sector shouldn't just be bringing capital to the table, but it should be bringing human capital in the form of experience, skills and capability. We're already doing that through a facility called TAMDEV in the context of infrastructure. There are many other areas. Business for South Africa has leveraged an extraordinary amount of resources pro bono from the business community, large, small, local and indeed international. There's no reason why that shouldn't be put at the disposal of the nation, and indeed that's what we're committed to do.
All right, we'll leave it there. Martin, thank you for talking to us. Martin Kingston is from Business for South Africa, explaining their 12-point blueprint plan to rescue the local economy, prevent it from collapsing. It's been handed over to government, and partnership is the biggest aspect of trying to save South Africa's economy.